The Norse creation story. This is a big one, so let's just get right to it. The Norse universe is centered around the idea of Yggdrasil, the world tree. In the world tree is the 9 realms, where all beings live. The world tree doesn't have a creation story attached to it, so as far as we know, it existed infinitely. The creation story we are talking about actually centers around one of the 9 realms, Midgard. The creation of Midgard starts with the existence of 2 other realms, Niflheim, the realm of ice, Muspelheim, the realm of fire. When the 2 realms met, the fire melted the ice and created a pool of water. Out of the water came Ymir, the first giant. Ymir spawned a race of giants that then populated the waters. Surprise, space cow! Yeah, a cow just appears and starts licking the ice until Buri, the first god, was unearthed, who I guess was just hanging out the entire time. Buri lived with the giants and had a son, who also had a son, who was named Odin. Odin and his brothers decided to kill Ymir, for some reason, and used his corpse to build land on top of the water. Odin, his brothers, and their children became the race of gods, which split between the Aesir and the Vanir. When the 2 tribes went to war, they divided themselves into 2 new realms, Asgard for the Aesir and Vanaheim for the Vanir. The gods also created the races of the universe, with each race getting their own realm. Jotunheim for the giants, Alfheim for the elves, Nidavellir for the dwarves, Hel for the dead, and finally Ymir's body became Midgard for the humans. When the gods create humanity on Midgard, they start with an Adam and Eve equivalent and then let them populate the world. Sometime later, the god Rig comes to Midgard and visits 3 couples. Each couple houses and feeds him, and Rig blesses each couple with a child. The first couple's child becomes the ancestor to the class of slaves and serfs. The second becomes the ancestor to the class of farmers and craftsmen, and the third becomes the ancestor to the class of warriors and nobles. Out of the race of nobles came a man named Conor. Conor became the greatest noble in all the land. When Conor was hunting, he was told of a different king from another land. This was King Dan. Conor, and members of the 3 classes, traveled to Dan to establish the class system in Dan's kingdom. So who is Dan anyway? Well, Dan was actually the son of Rig, and had many siblings. Dan himself ruled over the island of Zealand, but when Emperor Augustus of Rome, yeah, that one, attacked the Germans, Dan gained the support of the neighboring Jutes, Scandians, and the men of Finn, all making him king. This land was named after him, becoming Denmark. Dan's brothers, Nor and Gor, and his sister Goi, left Denmark to go north. Goi married the local king and Nor the king's sister. Nor inherited the throne and divided it with Gor, with Nor getting the mainland and Gor the islands. The children of Nor divided the mainland, and their children divided it further, until it was broken into tons of small kingdoms. The descendants of Nor remained in constant war with the descendants of Gor, who became the sea kings of the island. The mainland was named Norway in Nor's honor, and the islands named Orkney after Gor. Dan's final 2 brothers, Oystein and Drott, traveled to Sweden. Drott married into a Swedish monarchy called the Ynglings. The Ynglings were the kings of Uppsala in eastern Sweden. Long after Drott, the Ynglings died off, with the only remaining heir in Norway. A descendant of this Norwegian branch was a king named Harald Fairhair, who united Norway for the first time since Nor. The other brother was Oystein, who became king of southern Sweden. His descendants produced Ivar Vidfamne. Ivar was so awesome that he conquered all of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, plus a lot more. This deposed the descendants of Dan, Nor, and Drott, and when Ivar died, new kings took over. Ivar's viceroy, Valdar, became king of Denmark. Valdar then became the ancestor to the new Danish dynasty. Of this dynasty was Ragnar Lodbrok, who also became king of Sweden. His sons were the Viking invaders of England, and his descendants ruled both Norway and Sweden. The death of Ivan also allowed Harald Fairhair to unite Norway. This established the historical kings of Scandinavia. To put this on a timeline, there are 2 major historical references in this history: the kings after Ivar Vidfamne and Emperor Augustus. Augustus operated from 27 BC to 14 AD, putting King Dan and his brothers around the same time. Their descendants would continue to rule until the post-Ivar kings took over. Ivar Vidfamne is said to have died in 700 AD, with those kings ruling afterwards. The only thing remaining is the creation of Midgard and humanity. Since the god Rig created the 3 classes of man only 2 generations before Dan, that was in the early 100s BC. But since humans have been around for so long before Rig arrives, that puts their creation, and thus Midgard's, as an unknown. But that is just a mythical history of Scandinavia. The Germanic mythology spread all over Europe, all with its own history. But that is a story for another video.